All right, John Wilson, Information Security Director at Omaha Steaks. John, where are you, John Wilson? Are you here? You're not Chad who just walked in, right? Are you Chad? No. Okay. Chris Dickens, Security Operations Manager. I bet he's here because his boss is going to be on the stage. WoodmenLife. I'm sorry. Congratulations. Tracy Conklin is FCU, Third Party Governments from the Bank of Montreal. We're actually getting ready to head to Montreal, so congratulations. And I know this person's here. Jody Snyder, the Director of IT Risk and Compliance from Metropolitan Community College. Come on up, Jody. Okay. Then we have Yvonne, excuse me if I say it wrong, Ajama, Senior Manager, Third Party Security at CVS Health. Come on up, Yvonne. Then we have Michael Johnson, IT Director at Hills Brother Transportation. Come on up, Michael. Let's a big round of applause, everyone. Bernice Coward, IT Director of Nebraska Bank. Love seeing the women in cyber getting these awards. Congratulations, ladies. I do sit on the board at WeSees, so I am just always a big advocate for women in cyber. So still not quite as many women as men, and we appreciate all of our men that are here, but we all want to see the community of women grow, so thank you all for being here. Doane Solomon is the Director of Information Systems at Valmont Industries. Congratulations. Peter Franco is the Cybersecurity Operations at Conagra, am I saying that? Conagra Brands. Oh, okay, right.
Of everybody.
Oh.
Say cheese.
That's awesome.
Yeah, ready? I'll tag you all.
All right, yeah. I'll send you the list. No, I won't. Don't worry, everyone. Jack Christensen is Director of Technology at Malnove Holdings Company. Malnove Holdings Company. Jack, are you here? Here you go, Andrew. Congratulations, Jack. Curtis Steinecker is Solutions Architect, Information Architect Manager at Kiwi Technology Group. Did I say that wrong? How do you say it? Steinecker and Kiewit. Okay, I messed 2 for 2. I messed up. Sorry. You should see me, the Montreal person. You should see me in Montreal saying those names. It's really hard. It's all French. Sarah Young, Information Security Officer from Northwest Bank. All right, Sarah, come on up. One of my favorites. You're all my favorites, but Roxey Davis, Chief Operating Officer, and she's with Cyberjutsu, and she's just a rock star, and she's going to be sitting on our panel today. There you go, Roxy. Marc Johnson is the CISO of Impact Advisors, and on our panel, welcome back, Marc. Thank you. And we have Ross Coudeyras. Coudeyras is the Data Protection Officer. He's also an adjunct instructor at cybersecurity privacy at Doane University and one of our esteemed panelists today. Ross, where are you?
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you, and thanks for sitting on the panel. And last but certainly not least, our moderator, our keynote speaker today, Robert LaMagna-Reiter from Vice President CISO at WoodmenLife. Come on up, Robert. Big round of applause for all of our honorees. Thank you, Robert. Okay, everyone, so I am going to hand it over to the panel. We would like it to be interactive, so this panel is going to go for 1 hour. If you guys feel like during the panel, the bar is still open, you could sneak over and get another drink and come back. It's kind of easy since the doors are open. And today the panelists, They're going to be talking about securing the future, CISO insight, and industry leaders discussing current cyber threats and strategic defense practices. I've already introduced them with their honorary award, so let's welcome our panelists.
Nope, we're good to go. All right, I'll drop this off right here. As Kim mentioned, that bar's still open. So I'm glad. Look at this crowd that has stuck around. And as I pull up my my handy dandy questions, as always, I like to keep things interesting and unique. So thank you, everybody. We have a very esteemed panel. As Kim mentioned, she did a brief introduction. But I would love to hear from the panel a little bit about their background, their interests, and so that this audience can get a better glimpse of who the experts they're hearing today. So Roxey, I'll turn it over to you to give a brief introduction.
Okay. I'm Roxey Davis. I'm with Women's Cyberjutsu. It's a nonprofit it's a national nonprofit, but we have members internationally. It grows women and all others in the industry, whether that's entry into it, or they're trying to upskill, or they're trying to go into that leadership. Beyond that, we build community and collaboration with our industry partners. My history is mostly incident response and threat actor evaluations. I still work in the industry remotely for a company based out of Alabama. And I'm just excited to be here today to support this community here and hearing our panel.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Ross?
Everyone, Ross Coudeyras here, Data Protection Officer, Head of Security and Compliance at, I don't know if the first part was going through, so real fast. Ross Coudeyras, work in security and privacy compliance for software as a service, business-to-business company out of New York City, work from home, so, short commute, luckily. Been in software technology for 18 years now. Also work at Doane University, teach a cybersecurity class there. One of my students is here, so it's really cool to see them come back in the industry and succeed. I'm also a dungeon master in Dungeons and Dragons, so,
I think that was a challenge.
Yeah, roll D20,
Marc.
Excellent. Yes, Marc Johnson. I'm CISO at Impact Advisors. Grew up in the IT industry here in Omaha and have worked for various firms across the country, now one out of Chicago, but have taken my lumps, if you will, as a recovering CIO, and now continuing on the fight for business resilience. That's where my background really resides, is making sure that things can be recovered once the breach happens.
Great. Better? Great. Thank you for the introductions, everybody. We're going to warm up on this a bit. This is something I'm curious to get everybody's feedback on. We'll start with Roxey. When you think of the field of information security, cybersecurity in 2025, what's the first challenge or opportunity that comes to mind? It could be a threat, change in attacker tactics, or even something that's positive that's happened. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
So the first challenge or opportunity that I can think of that has existed or that potentially could?
Potentially, it's coming up.
Okay. Coming up, I will say that I would like to think that we have an opportunity, and I hate to use a buzzword, but with AI to get ahead of the ball game, whereas previous industry integrations of technology, when Google was founded or when the internet was founded, we didn't have frameworks for information security established. We have a chance to get even ahead of such a growing industry, as well as with quantum. While it's a small things and tasks that it can do, we have an opportunity to get ahead of the game with that.
Awesome. Well, change things up. Marc, your thoughts?
So multiple different things come to mind, but I would say that quantum computing, I'll take off right there, is problematic. I don't want it to be the hair on fire. We're going to throw some fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there. But if you think about quantum computing is very expensive today. When it's not, what's going to happen to encryption? It's going to be cracked instantaneously. So we need to start thinking ahead of that and how fast and quick, and hopefully artificial intelligence can help us get there and be the whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
And Ross?
Well, in my industry, we've had a .ai domain since 2014, so it's not new to us, but it's obviously new. In 2023, in March, is when GPT 3.5 came to the market, and so now if you don't have AI in your product, maybe someone can't actually buy your product because it's required. If you don't know how to use AI, why should we hire you? That's what's happening in this industry, and that can be frightening. And I think that we have some problems coming up with relying too much on the vibe coding type of thing, where maybe it's not going to be secure. Maybe that these agents that we're using don't understand security because it's AI. So we still need human in the loop. And I think human in the loop is something that I'm super focused on at my company. And so that's something that we need to keep in mind for upcoming threats that we have to address. We need to have humans there. We can't just replace people with AI.
I want to add to that. I love how you added human in the loop, because people think that AI is this one solution that they no longer need the human, or people think they're going to be replaced by AI. But AI is like a tool like any other tool. When Google came along, or when computers came along, people were fearful that they were going to lose their jobs, they were going to lose, their livelihood. But you learn those tools, you adapt to it, but you have to be the human, you have to be the educated intellectual being. So I really loved how you added that.
Yeah, no, that's actually great. I mean, because if we look at some of the bigger landscape that we're all navigating, I'm kind of curious if we can touch on that subject with each of the panelists, that there are several areas in which there's something that's being hyped that we're having to coach and explain and bring back to real implications, real usability for our organizations and for our peers. So, Ross, do you want to continue on that same train of thought on whether it's AI or something adjacent? Is there something where you've had to either deprioritize or bring back to earth to overcome the hype of this information out there?
That's an interesting question. So we had to kind of start from scratch since like I had mentioned, we've been using machine learning. I didn't actually say that, but that's what, AI was really what it was before these Gen AI systems came out. And so we had to kind of start from the basics and look and say, hey, all of our customers, we do business to business, so they use our software, okay? So we have to, bend the knee to their requirements and do X, Y, and Z that they require of us. And so what I'm trying to say is we were doing machine learning, Gen AI came out. How is that different than what we were doing before? All of a sudden, we have to look at our supply chain and all of our vendors that we're using. They're going to start using AI as well. Okay, we're putting client data into our vendors. How are those vendors using that AI? Is that allowed? What can we do? What are we allowed to do from a customer perspective? And that's our bottom line. And then therefore, we have to make sure that our vendors are also doing the bottom line as well. Whereas before, it was just kind of the Wild West. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but it's certainly something that is evolving rapidly, and it's something that I have to do a lot of research on, and my team, to make sure that we are doing, there's all sorts of different frameworks. You talked about that in your keynote. You have the EU AI Act, you have the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. So if you're going to use AI and you're going to use these machine learning, whatever it is, Gen AI systems, make sure that you are high enough to ride the ride, right? At the carnival ride, make sure that you have the right controls in place. Make sure your employees understand how to use it, how they can't use it, what kind of sensitive information can they put in these systems, are we training on that data, et cetera, et cetera. So it's certainly a complex answer to your question.
Yeah.
So
I'll throw it over to you, Marc. Now, you see a wide variety of examples through everybody that you advocate with, coach, that you lead. What are you seeing that you've had to help bring back to earth, rein in, and help keep on the realism train, right?
Right. So I'll touch on two. One is in the current hype cycle, and one is after the hype cycle. Current hype cycle, we're about to hit the peak, I think, is the whole zero trust architecture, right? Buzzword because it's not a product. It is a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
We have to think about networking different. We cannot continue the way we have been. We need to shift the standard. So that, again, is just bringing people back to understanding, hey, it's not a product, it's not I'm going to plug a hole in the dam. No, 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 you've got to rebuild the dam. So that's the first one. The second one, a lot of people are going to look at me cross-eyed here. We're on the backside of the hype cycle coming down, and that's cloud. Not that cloud is bad. Cloud is good. But number one, you don't put everything there because not everything is cloud ready. Number one. Number two, it's not about them securing you. You have to understand the shared responsibility associated with how you're using that cloud. Infrastructure as a service, right? You're 95% liable for all your own security. And a lot of people make the bad assumption, oh, I'm going to the cloud, AWS has got me. Not so much. So.
Okay. Any other added thoughts, Roxy?
My only added thought is I totally agree with the misconception of they think that the cloud's got them or AWS's or Azure's got them, but especially those that are in small orgs that aren't well informed. But to you, Ross, that you mentioned, I'm summarizing, that you really combat that misinformation through education and like giving them an awareness and empowerment. But with the smaller orgs, you're not going to get that, and especially when they were new to it, they just thought everything was good. So I definitely love your all's viewpoints and combating misinformation. I really feel like that's going to be education, but also through experience and storytelling, having them see it in a different light, so not within cybersecurity. Google has a great like YouTube version of it. Was a couple of years ago where they talked about cybersecurity things, but from a non-cybersecurity story of where like the meerkat will stand up and watch for their group of people, but that is your security operations, your threat intelligence. They're watching for the threats, and having those stories that they can see and relate to, and then bringing it back to cyber or security or whatever it is, that education really combats that misinformation.
Yeah, and I want to hone in on that key point that was just mentioned. The whole thing around narrative intelligence, critical thinking, storytelling. We're going to see a large deficit of that over the next few years. The more not even just the cyber industry, but tech and other verticals jump on the AI wagon, you're going to have to double down on that storytelling, removing the cyber speak from it, because that's going to become more and more table stakes. It's going to take the critical thinking from everybody in this room, compounded with your lived experiences and your storytelling, to actually move the needle forward. So great call outs. Something I'm curious, the current threat landscape changes quite frequently, right? So I'm curious, and I'll open up to the panel, whoever wants to answer first. Are there any risks that you see the industry over or under prepared for?
I'll jump in there.
Okay.
Third-party risk management. You've heard it a couple times today in some presentations, but indirect scanning via, whether it's BitSight or anybody else, not enough. Questionnaires, not enough. We have to understand how those organizations are truly using the controls, and not just putting controls in place, but executing upon those controls. It's not a tool, guys. It's a program.
Yeah.
And we execute the program, yes, with tools makes it easier. But we can't rely on tools to solve the problem and check the box.
Just to add on that real fast, like what you said, I do like how the industry has moved on to using 24/7, 365 monitoring tools. Rob talked about slightly Vanta and Drata during his keynote. Been using those products since 2021 at our company, and it's really revolutionized how our employees who don't think about security normally, they can see that I can assign controls to them. We're cloud native. They have a view-only service account right to our infrastructure. Vanta can tell us, hey, you're failing these controls. Hey, you have these service accounts that haven't ever had the passwords rotated. Maybe you don't have password requirements. You don't have MFA on X amount of accounts, things of that nature. So what I'm trying to get at to what Marc said is, if you have your vendors all using a monitoring tool like that, you can see when your vendor starts failing controls as well. they have a dashboard. That's a buzzword. So if you have a bingo card, make sure you do that. So anyway, you can see how your vendors are doing from a security posture management perspective, based upon whatever frameworks that they say they do. So there's SOC 2 Type 2. We can make fun of that as much as we want, but at least there's some controls in place that they're trying to fulfill. So anyway,
I want to add to your mention of SOC 2 Type 2. I agree. It's a lot of words on paper, but they also give you when I evaluate them from an incident response perspective, I'm looking for the tools that I've worked with before and I know are good or I know may have a vulnerability, because I check it from a perspective of that, of knowing the tools and knowing the industry. And I think if we shift that mindset of when we look at these, instead of looking for their exceptions or whatever the situation is, if we know some key information about their infrastructure, we'll know a little bit more to protect that. But going back to what you said with assessments, something that I've challenged my organization with was preliminary, getting some of these predetermined assessments and monthly filling them out so that when somebody asks for them, we have more details that we can give them. And I think that would change the way we do vendor risk management. If it, like Ross said, that having a platform where they have this interconnection exchange really would
I'll add to that one last piece, and that is we need to move up in the procurement life cycle. And I've done this a couple different places. When the organization starts to look at procuring whatever it is, new facility, new product, whatever, they have to evaluate them first, right? We need to evaluate those companies as well from a security posture standpoint before they finalize the top 3 or whatever it is. Because then it's a valuable input, just like they would go and do a Moody's search and research. Hey, we're part of that risk equation as well. So catapulting us from, backside, throw it over the fence, and hope that we can get it back in 2 days when it takes 3 to 4 weeks. We need to get ahead of it.
Well, I really appreciate the insights. And if it's all right with the panel, I want to shift a little bit into your thought process on how teams are thinking about tough trade-offs or how we make tough trade-offs. And I don't know how much of it is top of mind to folks in this room or the panel, but through some of the restructuring at the federal level, we've seen some divestment in cybersecurity preparedness, information sharing. I am curious if that's having any near-term impacts on how you get threat intel, partnering with CISA or partnering with any folks from the Department of Defense, or if you're confident the private sector will eventually pick up the gaps. Roxey,
Go ahead.
No.
Okay, Roxey,
Okay.
I'll start with you.
Okay. So I have a pretty different perspective, whereas I'm in a nonprofit space. We see a lot of the change of landscape, the communication flows from nonprofits that's no longer getting funding, such as Matter Attack. It was primarily funded through the government, and so seeing some of those communication flows lower for us, as well as the grant work across all nonprofits is lower. However, I'm seeing people trying to not silo on purpose, but like hold their information because they don't know where it's going to look like in corporations-wise, used against them, or if that's something they should share because the people they normally share with don't. So always have the funding. So it's been a little different, but not too much, because the community is still the community, and we're collectively sharing with each other. But that's from like an organizational to an individual level.
So I would say I anticipate that while this is a lull in funding, I think it is an effort to centralize what the regulations are and how they're executed. When we have directions in healthcare that are different from SEC, that are different from FTC and FFIEC, when they all can be put together, there's 16 different things we've got to do that are not in congruence. We really need more of a focus and an understanding, especially from the regulatory agencies, to understand, okay, I can tell you I had a breach within 60 days. I can't tell you definitively what it was beyond that. It generally takes me a lot longer to do that. So it becomes an understanding of there's a little give and take. I'm not a big one on regulation, but I think we need, and it's going this direction, more of a centralized, singular message.
Okay, Ross?
So the first thing I think about is information from the government that can help provide to the private sector. So I'm thinking of Salt Typhoon. So China infiltrating every major ISP in the United States and our allies in Canada and other countries, more or less meaning China had access to those systems that the US government uses to help, I'll use the word spy, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but view more or less the communication that you're using your phone with that goes through your, like Verizon, for example. So if China's in there and they can observe your SMS text messaging that's unencrypted and things of that nature, and relying on that for MFA and other sensitive information that's going through Verizon and those other carriers, if the government is getting cut and they don't have as much information on how to fight Salt Typhoon in these nation states, then I think that will directly affect us in some way. And then the next thing I think about is the utilities. I used to work at an energy grid company, right? We have a lot of protections in place to try to make sure that energy is provided, because without that, obviously, people who rely on that at their homes could potentially have harmful effects, hospitals, for example. And so there's a lot of smaller companies out there that don't necessarily have the resources and who are relying on the Cybersecurity Information and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
And so if they're getting cut, then I think that's going to have bad repercussions potentially. So I'm just being more negative than maybe
That's
some,
real.
but I am worried.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the caution is warranted a little bit because we just don't know, right? We could have a great outcome where we do have more centralization and standardization on frameworks and regulations. At the same time, we have less information flowing out. And one of the things that the panel brought that just triggered something in my mind is if the folks in here over time are not thinking about identifying and playbooks around non-kinetic warfare, as you mentioned with the China infiltration, that's something that should be top of mind as AI and quantum computing start to ramp up, because that will become more and more trivial. So I'm going to actually shift gears again a little bit. I was told we have some online questions that we can pull from the panel, and I always love to crowdsource those rather than just going off my list. So Lawrence is asking, besides ISO 42001, do you see any other audit frameworks coming into play soon? How will SOC, PCI, HIPAA, et cetera, address AI similarly to how ISO has attempted to with their AI, safety, security, governance of AI models?
So NIST has already addressed it with the NIST RMF,
Yep.
right? So the risk management framework. So we already have something, or at least we have something to refer to. Again, you don't have to agree with every bit and piece of it, and you can incorporate other different frameworks that are appropriate for your business. But yeah, NIST RMF is the one I would point to right away.
Yeah, I agree. I've even seen several assessment questionnaires based on that, and I've seen a lot of organizations wanting you as a vendor to comply with certain AI requests, and so internally within my org, we're building off of that collectively within NIST and all those informations to build one central way of building out how we strategically connect to AI regulations.
The first thing that comes to mind is mapping between frameworks, right? So all these frameworks that we have, 50 of them, 100 of them, doesn't matter. They all have something in common. And so you could pay your audit firm or your CPA firm, whoever, to help map your, we're compliant with ISO 27001. We're 42001 for AI. And how does that carry over to the things we're already doing? So that's certainly something to think about. But I think get back to the fundamentals. For me, I've mentioned this a couple times, business to business, software company. So I have to bend the knee to our clients. And so it's like, what do the clients care about? And that's something that I pay a lot of attention to and making sure that we come up with that baseline. So, for example, look at something like the OWASP top 10 for LLMs, right? When you're talking about AI, that has a lot of controls in place that you can do. How are you doing prompt injections or data poison modeling, things of that nature. Something that you should be thinking about and evaluating with your product and engineering teams or whoever else is in charge of AI at your company to make sure that you have those in mind and make sure you have documentation and making sure, and Rob said in the keynote, it's not super useful to have a policy when people just click a button to sign it. So instead of, you should still do that so you can cover your ass. But at the same time, make sure, if you have, my company is small, so we can do monthly town halls where everyone gets in the same meeting. Have someone in leadership talk about the realities of why we are doing X, Y, and Z. Make sure that employees understand the risks associated with that. Make sure they understand how they should use these tools. That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah. From my perspective, I would add on to everything the panel said phenomenally. You're going to also start seeing some more shared responsibility model considerations, whether your organizations are leveraging an open source LLM, whether you're just using a third-party off-the-shelf solution. Very similar to how the panel addressed earlier between the IaaS, SaaS, PaaS differences in the cloud. You're going to see continued, I would say, discrepancy and continued variation with different types of artificial intelligence deployments. So please, keep in mind everything the panel's saying, because you're going to have to then take those recommendations and then determine what's applicable across whatever AI implementation is going on.
Can I interrupt you real fast?
Yeah.
One thing that came to mind, make sure you have backups too of vendors potentially, because what happens if copyright law goes through with OpenAI or these other systems, and all of a sudden, Times Magazine is suing OpenAI right now. So normally, OpenAI has a 30-day retention period, okay? Guess what? That's not in effect right now. There is no retention period. Because of the lawsuit, anything you put in OpenAI right now is being stored. It's being stored in a separate system with allegedly access to only specified people, lawyers, things of that nature. But because of this lawsuit, all of a sudden that 30-day retention that we're relying on for privacy is gone. And so if that's the case, does your company stick with OpenAI, or do they move to Claude, or do they move to X, Y, and Z, whatever vendor it is, Anthropic, whatever? So that's just something to keep in mind.
Well, and there's a practical experience that we just had with Change Healthcare. 90% of the hospitals were relying upon Change Healthcare for pre-auth, right? And they were out for what, 30-plus days? Have a secondary. It has nothing to do with technology. It's just pure business logic. No single point of failure.
Yeah. I do like how you all mentioned that fault tolerance, that no single point of failure, having backups. And like they said, you can evaluate them, have them ready, have that conversation established, but without too much lost time. I mean, as you're resetting up systems, there's going to be some bumps in the road, but having them established is pretty good.
Well, yeah, most definitely. And I think one of the key things the panel's getting to is that doesn't mean you have to run hot with multiple vendors. It means you need to have already done some discovery work, maybe have some contracts in place, be able to like pull that lever on that relationship, right?
Yes.
Yep. Roxey, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay.
I'm curious, in your either current role or previous role, have you or your team ever had to take a calculated security risk against your judgment to support a business project or effort?
So in my current or previous roles, so I'm going to caveat with that. No way stating any.
No need to disclose where or when,
okay.
but just
so yeah.
maybe hypothetical.
Hypothetically, yes. I like hypothetically. Hypothetically, yes. I evaluated a particular vendor, but the business wanted it. And the business drives the money in the organization. So when we had to take that calculated security risk, we had to put several controls in place surrounding that particular collaboration. And it was difficult to manage that and get IT on board to set up those controls. Additionally, we had a much older org I was with, and they did not want to set up MFA whatsoever. So it took a long time, but I had to continue to accept and go through with that risk. Yeah.
If you don't mind me following up, to your knowledge, or if you can disclose, did the business experience any adverse impacts as a result of that exception?
For the first one, no. Because of the controls we were able to set up in place, it took, like I said, a little bit of time to get everybody on board and get things established. However, the second one, there was people to able to authenticate or use their passwords, and it did cause some negative impacts, but not full downtime, not, breaking things completely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Ross, if you're able to share.
Sure, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what our job is struggling with and juggling this risk and talking to the business, people who, higher pay grade than I to accept X, Y, and Z if needed. But maybe you could look at compensating controls, right? On being obscure on purpose, right?
Yeah.
In this imaginary situation.
Hypothetical.
Hypothetical, yeah. But could you limit the scope as well? Do you have to do X, Y, and Z? So for example, we're a product company, a software company, so product team always come with the new features, of course. We want to make sure our product is top of the line. We have competition, blah, blah, blah. So, but I come back to them and I say, do we have to force our clients to do this new thing? For example, before we have pseudonymous data, de-identified data, so we can limit the scope. It's not as risky because we don't have PII, confidential information. They want to now do video. So video is a feature that we released on our platform. Video comes with issues such as you can't be anonymous necessarily if you're on video, because guess what? Now we have your face and we have your voice and we have you're literally on video, so you're not anonymous anymore. So I said, let's make that opt-in. The business agreed. So we're not forcing our customers who aren't comfortable with that new data and with that new risk. If they are comfortable with it, then they can opt in and use those features. Otherwise, we're not forcing them to do so. That's just one example.
Yeah, especially in healthcare, it's a everyday thing. I don't know if you've been to a clinic, a hospital room lately, and you've looked at the medical equipment. Most of those are running on Windows NT.
Oh, joy.
That's a risk, right? So there are some things we have to do to mitigate the risk, air gapping them, making sure that there's no outside connections to them, et cetera, so forth and so on. But yeah, it's the element of you need the board, not just the CIO, the CISO. You need the board to understand what the risk is and to help understand what it means to accept that risk. And if that means cybersecurity insurance goes up, they then know we've got to allocate more money to that, right? Rather than the element of, wait a minute, your budgets are stable. Well, no, you accepted a risk, and this is the impact of it.
Do you find the business being receptive to those periodic check-ins to validate the acceptance? Do they typically agree or have differences of opinion on what the acceptance actually means to them?
Yes, the business often doesn't realize the level of risk or the quantification of that risk. And so when you can quantify to them, oh, by the way, it's driving up our cybersecurity insurance by tenfold, it makes a big impact and they can understand much easier. And this goes back to what Rob was talking about. We need to speak English. We need to speak business. We need to be able to get them the story that they can understand. And when you do it in that way, they tend to come around. But when you start talking attack surface and attack vectors, their eyes roll back.
Speaking on their language, speaking their business, I want to add, it's only because I like the book, A Perfect Story by Karen Eber. She tells a good framework for all of us here in cybersecurity of developing a good story and communicating those data, the data points back to your non-data speaking people. So a little take back and be able to communicate the story of your work.
Yeah. Well, something I'd like us to touch on too, I think will be important for our audience is, we're not experts at speaking to the business by default. I've had some very humbling conversations where I should have put my foot in my mouth before I spoke and after I walked out of the room, and then I learned from that. And so I'm just curious if the panel will be willing to share any examples or circumstances that, looking back, forced you to learn or forced you to adopt some of that different business speak? I was just curious. Marc, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah. So I had a conversation with the board a few years ago, and the vulnerability I was bringing up was that we had a lot of endpoints that were unable to be identified location-wise. And I got the question back, well, how do you not know that? Well, okay, yeah, I should have put the foot in the mouth and just stopped there. It became an element of, well, they may have it turned off and in their desk drawer, how am I going to find it? It's the element of them not understanding that because we're technologists, we don't know where every piece of technology is, right? And so it's talking to the business and learning, how do I say that in their terms? Because they were bankers on a healthcare board. Put it in terms of, hey, do you have access to that cache every day? All day? No, you don't. Then they understood. So I had to learn by putting the foot in the mouth.
Ross, or Roxey?
Go ahead, Ross.
All right. That's a good question that I don't necessarily have the best answer to be frank. So I'm just trying to think of, and it comes down to anything where you put your foot in your mouth. Just be willing to admit that you messed up. We all mess up, especially if your company messes up and your customers are affected. You need to tell the truth, and you need to make sure that you're transparent with them. Sometimes I think of my other title could be Chief Trust Officer, right? Making sure I'm in charge of privacy and security at my company. So it's up to me to make sure that clients understand what we're doing. And if we mess up, it's my job to make sure that we communicate to them. And it's okay to mess up, you just have to own it. I guess that's what it really comes down to.
So I've been trying to rack my brain, remembering a moment where maybe it didn't come out right. And sometimes we all have to learn the hard way. I feel like, and maybe I have an advantage in this area with where I didn't initially grow up thinking I was going to go in technology. I was growing up thinking I'm going to go in psychology. So, like, communication is the core
so
component.
you were critiquing me earlier. I got it.
So it's a little core component of that. But, like, coming into the industry from that mindset, sometimes assuming everybody wants to have that level of dialogue instead of just getting straight to the point, because I was working with the different teams of the security operators or system admins versus the product developers and software developers, and having those assumptions of everybody understands what I know or they don't understand what I know. It really helped when I would go to their desk, because I initially started in data loss prevention as an analyst, going in, if they had a bunch of issues or blocks, I'd go to their desk, I'd have a conversation, I make it very personal, one-on-one. But sometimes it would scare them to see me coming, thinking that they're in trouble. So the foot in the mouth of, no, everything's fine. Well, it's not fine, but you have to backtrack a little bit, but having a calm conversation.
Yeah, I think we have a question back over here. And while you're getting the microphone to him, I think a lot of it also comes down to we need to do our due diligence. We need to know our audience.
Yeah.
And that means sometimes you've got to do the research and understand the business. Get in there, get some reading, ask somebody to mentor you, make sure that you do understand the business.
Yeah. I think I was having, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I think I was having a very similar conversation with somebody the other day, is that we in cybersecurity or information security have to know security in, like, or they say an inch deep and a mile wide of all the other business aspects, so that we can know the security but also talk to the business. And that's, I feel like, a lot to ask of people in our industry, but we still have to do it. Go ahead with your question.
My question is, does each one of you have a good relationship with your senior management where you're meeting on a regular basis? Because it seems to me, in my experience, if I wait to go to the board, I usually get 15 minutes to talk about a 2-hour subject, and I can't get into the details. And so it is either FUD or it's just a hope and a prayer. So I'm just curious if you all have that kind of relationship where you can grease the wheels, if I can use that term.
So I
and
would say
explain the knowledge.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this with executives, but every executive I've worked with hates to be surprised. So they know about it well before we're headed to the board, right? And I'm creating consensus along the way to make sure that I have their support specifically, so when the board asks the questions, they answer for me.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have weekly meetings with the CTO, and so it's one of those where if I want to talk about something, he knows the business better than I do. He's been there longer, he's a higher level in the business, works more closely with the executive team, and so if I have a concern or I want to address risks with the board, go to him first. Say, how do you think we should approach this? Just because he knows the business better than I do, he knows those relationships, he knows how they work. So he can say, all right, yeah, try, instead of doing this blunt attack, not attack, but, don't be so blunt, maybe, go back down a little bit and break it down a little bit. Don't want to talk about attack surfaces and, APIs, whatever. So
Don't say MITRE.
yeah, if you just follow the MITRE framework,
Everything's fine. Yeah. So having those candid conversations with your leadership and CTO, having an established even skip level throughout the entire organization is critical. But also, I directly give my management and my other executive level people like just snapshots of work we've done or that we're in the process of doing, giving them that kind of high level information so that, like they said, when they come to another conversation and they hear about something going on, they're not surprised. They're the ones actively talking about it. They're the ones to give more information.
In my experience, the board is looking to see how well you're executing based on the alignment that you've achieved with your peers and the executive leadership. The board's not there to make decisions for you or to settle an argument. The board is there to say, hey, do you need any added support to come to a decision? Do you feel like you're having the right conversations and getting the right support? And if the answer to those are no, then say, well, what can we do to help put pressure or foster the support or the decision making? So in my experience, it's a matter of reporting on the progress we're making. Are we having the right folks at the table? Do we feel like we're making decisions in the right risk lens, right? Because we're not going to get everything that we want all the time. And that there's a plan of execution in place. So all of that should be thought out and solved and communicated ahead of time, that you're acting according to a plan. You want to make sure that they don't have any concerns with said plan, and so that's going to force you to backtrack and try to resolve all those prior to keep it meaningful in that 15 minutes, to your point.
I want to add, because I was hearing you talk about having that communication, the plan. When you're sharing the data points with your board, don't just have data for data's sake. Have the story. Tell them why this data matters and how it relates back to the plan and how it relates back to the organizational goals and hierarchy and structure.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we got a question.
So I like to keep a pretty heavy, I like to keep a heavy pulse on kind of what this landscape from a cybersecurity perspective is. I could say it's kind of an obsession of mine. So I'm very nervous. I used to be cautiously optimistic when AI came out. Now I've moved down to honestly nervous about our future state because of I think the lack of regulations and things like that, and probably the fact that we're kind of against we're fighting against something that's reactive. Let's put it that way. We're very reactive in a way. Quantum computing becoming a thing now and it's starting to become more scalable. I don't know if you guys saw, NVIDIA, they just put an age restriction on literally changing GPU settings. 19 years old is the minimum to be able to change a setting on your machine, your GPU. That's insane to me. That just goes to show that put these technology into the wrong hands, which they are already in. Ransomware as a service is a very big industry right now, which that keeps me up at night. And all the stuff that's going on, that we hear about, things like that, we're very reactive to everything, right? What happens when you get breached. Say WoodmenLife, they become breached. I mean, what do we do? Like, how do we prepare for that? How is it that, that we protect ourselves in that kind of a way? Because as a person that's in charge of all those kinds of things, I'm like, do I need to just spend like endless amounts of money to cover patch every hole or every gap, or that's not feasible. So how do we balance that?
So
I don't know. I'm curious what your guys' take is.
The quick answer is what Roxy is going to probably go on and on about, because this is her passion. You have to have a plan, right? Your incident response plan is key. Number one, to fighting the battle to begin with. Then you have to have that linked to your disaster recovery plan as to how am I going to recover from that breach, what's happened, how do I make sure that I have the data I need, how do I make sure that I continue, and then finally that needs to be linked to your business continuity plan. And a lot of us in here are being tasked with doing business impact analysis when it's truly not our responsibility, but that kind of goes back to knowing the business.
Yeah.
The business should own the business impact analysis and the business continuity plan, but we can help them understand their responsibility to get that, because that then relays onto DR, what are my priorities? So I'm sorry, Roxy.
No, you're absolutely right on. Yes, I'm going to talk about that plan. We know that this is an ongoing, huge, game-changing technology piece, whether it's a threat or it's just an enhancement, however you want to view that. But we also know going forward that we've seen little bits of it coming to fruition. And so having that plan, having that established, but also having already stories in place or frameworks of those stories in place that you can communicate to your leadership, but also go back to the old checks and balances of, hey, trust but verify. If you see somebody who has an AI video of somebody on a call and they're asking you to send millions of dollars, they're like, okay, awesome. Give me your security code. Thank you for that. I'm going to then hang up and then call you directly back on a separate line. And then they're going to call, you call them and they're like, no, that was a spoofing. It was not real. It was a deep fake. Having that conversation of the old ways of doing security is still like, well, out of technology, out of bandwidth, double checks.
Anything you want to add, Ross?
Yeah, just to add on that just real fast, like you want to make sure the business understands when they actually have something in paper with their clients and the contracts, if they understand what the recovery point objective is. How often are you doing backups? Are you actually testing those backups? Are they, if something happens, how much data are you willing to lose? How much data do the customers realize that they are going to lose? And then tie that to the recovery time objective. How long, if you get ransomware, how long is it going to take you to get back? Have you tested that? How resilient are you? Do you have high resiliency? Are you in one region? What happens to that region if there's a disaster? What if Cloudflare goes down and the whole world explodes, right? We're probably all in trouble at that point. But tying all this back to the business as well, so executives and leadership and the board know that, hey, we have this service level agreement in place, and if we can't meet that, then it's going to directly affect our revenue. And that's what it really comes down to for most places.
And giving an analogy, it's, the moat and the castle walls are great, but you have to have a plan for what to do once they get in there, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think we have to create a lot of redundancies, and that's easier said than done. Like for a company like the one that I work at, it's very small, so I do have that ability to just literally have a on-the-shelf, hot, ready to go, new domain, everything. I can be in business in 2 hours if I need to. But someone like WoodmenLife and the rest of you guys, that's probably not the most feasible route to go. And so I feel like at any moment we could all enter this like digital state of emergency, which I'm just waiting for that black swan event to happen at some point. I know it's coming. I think it's coming. I believe it's coming. I'm nervous for it. And I think the introduction of quantum computing is going to put us in a whole nother spot. So I think this conversation is going to look very different. Maybe next year, the year after, I don't know, but it's going to look very different. So best of luck to all you guys.
Thanks.
Oh, no, it's great. If there's one thing I can add to double down everything the panel was saying, take everything they had mentioned, write it down, file it, commit it to memory because they're spot on. Another analogy I would give is we were having these same sky is falling conversations of fears back when this thing cloud was first coming out, right? It was going to...
What about the year 2000?
In the year 2000. So I don't discount the actual negative consequences of nefarious use of quantum or AI. But the great thing is, if we begin plotting the plans, the directions to begin updating our standard work and process, taking into account recovery, resilience, marching towards that business process optimization, as we talked about earlier, there's ways organizations can insulate themselves. So are there going to be folks that do get owned? Probably. There always are. But it's on us and us to build camaraderie with our teams to execute to make sure that doesn't happen. Let's actually switch gears a little bit more, talk a little bit about maybe leadership lessons, takeaways, culture. I'm just curious. We I think recognize as a discipline a lot of the work and success that we realize. It's not technology based. It's relationship based. It's influence. So start with you, Roxey. What is the biggest lesson you've learned as a leader that's had nothing to do with technology?
I will so there is a word of technology, but it's the order of people, processes, and then technology. People being the human behind the machine. They are driven with feelings and emotions. So getting them emotionally connected to the story of what you're doing and why, that's been probably the biggest game changer for me. And building those relationships, thinking, yeah, I'm able to do some technical stuff, but like having other people that you can always lean on to have those conversations that are smarter than you. I love not being the smartest person in the room because that means I have a chance to learn and discover something new. I'm all about an adventure, and I feel like learning is an adventure, and having those people there to amplify each other and grow each other up is probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be young in my career, the expert. And I've learned over the years that you can't always be the expert, even if you truly are. How else are you going to grow your team? You've got to give responsibility to your team and allow them to grow. You are no longer the expert to get on the keyboard, solve the problem, find the bad guy. You need to allow your team to grow and do that. It was something that I struggled with for a while, but give you a perfect non-technical example of this. My son graduated college, got commissioned in the Army, went to basic training, basically is what they call it, something different now. He got trained to be a tank commander, and when he got to his post in Fort Riley, Kansas, they put him in charge of a Bradley platoon, two entirely different types of machinery and tactics and so forth. And he called me frantic. I don't know anything about it. I said, I don't care. Get in the mud with them. They'll respect you for it. They're your experts now. Mm-hmm. So just realize you're a leader to move the team forward. You are no longer an individual contributor.
I'll hit on both of those. Very good points, because really when it comes down to it, I like to use data. So the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, the last speaker hit on that a little bit. Human element is involved in over 60% of breaches. We can have all the tools in the world, right? It's famous, one of my favorite memes. You have a boxing ring. You have Dave, the end user, in the corner. The other corner, you have your firewalls and your IDSs and all the tools. Rob's presentation talked about Bruce Schneier saying, if you're relying on a tool, I don't remember the exact quote, but tools aren't going to solve all our problems. Yeah. People are going to help solve our problems. And so it comes down to those relationships that we're relying on, because it comes down to the human, no matter what tool changes, right? It's AI comes, but all the technologies always change. There's always going to be something new. There's going to be quantum computing, like encryption's going to be broken. Hopefully we can catch up. It's our job to always be wary of what's happening. But what I'm trying to say is, the people, process, and technology, the people part is the fundamental.
The only thing I would add is the people part doesn't happen overnight. You can procure a piece of technology faster. You can build a relationship sometimes. So keep that in mind and plan accordingly.
Yeah.
So, I'll pause. Are there any other audience questions before we turn into some final thoughts?
There's a
Virtual question.
Yeah.
To protect the innocence or guilt of previous employment experiences, have any of the panel members faced situations where operational security decisions had been made by C-suite without the consultation of staff, resulting in an increase of risk as a result of the solution degradation? If so, how was it handled, and were any lessons gleaned from that situation? So I say the TLDR, did the C-suite step in, make an executive decision, and how do we deal with it, if that's happened to anybody?
So I have a humorous one that really is less technical than it is understanding electronics. Building out a new suite for the business, wanted to put the network router and rack in a certain position. CEO came in and said, no, we're moving it over here, right below the fire sprinkler. So at that point, okay, it's your business. You accept the risk. All right, I'm done.
Oh,
Did you ever set off the fire sprinkler? I'm just kidding.
I can only imagine how bad that would go at any given point. But did it ever actually go off underneath
No.
it? No. You hear me say, "Oh man!" Like sometimes you want people to, you don't want technology destroyed or whatever, but you want people to understand a risk of that through lived experiences, because some people only learn through doing it or experiencing the hard way. So, yeah, just to summarize, at some point, hypothetically, during my career, I've had the C-suite step in and accept something that I've recommended against. And there's just like, I've plainly laid out the story. I've given you metaphors and examples. And if you still want to go ahead, that is your prerogative, as long as you are the one responsible in accepting said risk. So, yeah.
And
I would just real quickly add root cause analysis. Anytime we have an incident, figure out what happened, okay? I'm talking about from an ignorant standpoint of maybe the security or privacy teams weren't involved with a new decision that the C-suite made. Well, that caused something to happen. Clients are mad. They're leaving our business, so the revenue's affected. So what is the RCA there? Well, lack of communication. So what do? Well, you meet more frequently. You don't meet with your product team just once a quarter, like Rob said in his keynote. You should probably do that more frequently because they're releasing these new features that affect data in a new way. You have new vendors. They haven't been vetted. We've been talking about supply chain risks throughout this entire day. So really just slowing it down and saying what happened and taking responsibility of that to make sure it doesn't happen in the future.
The only thing I'd add on hypothetically or potentially in a past life is we all live in a world where it's resource scarcity, right? So people, process, and technology can all be scarce, and sometimes there are trade-offs. And one of those trade-offs that can occur sometimes is how much visibility you have into your information environment despite your recommendation as a security professional, and then having to gently explain why there might have been an event or an incident when you didn't have the right resources to get all the visibility required to have a holistic picture. Can be a very interesting conversation. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Do we have any other online questions, or are we good to move on and wrap it up with our closing thoughts? We're good.
Okay.
Okay, so as we approach the top of the hour, I do want to thank the panelists again. Thank you very much for all of your time and assistance. I would like to try to extract as much infinite wisdom from each of our three esteemed guests as I could. So if you could leave this audience with one thing to start doing tomorrow, what would it be?
Do speeches. Speak at a conference. You learn the material very well once you do that. You learn how to communicate and how to display your ideas to people who may not do what you do every day. We keep talking about the leadership at our companies. Attack surface. Keep making that joke. But breaking down details is not easy, especially when you're on stage like this. And I really learned how to speak by just signing up for a conference and making it happen. Join Toastmasters. Do it twice a month. Okay? It's really easy to do. Learn to communicate, work on those soft skills, because those are the things that are hard to build. You can learn all the technical skills all day, but the soft skills are really what happens and makes business work.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that, is that I recently heard like them called foundational skills or core skills, and I'm like, ooh, I like that, because soft, I heard that they said that implies that it's not as valuable. No, they're probably like the foundation of your house is pretty critical to a house, you know, but so this is core skills that we need to have and utilize as somebody in the industry. But I've also heard, and I love that you said speaking and Toastmasters, I've also heard people say that they don't have anything to say or they don't know what to speak about. There's projects that we all, once we learn it, we all think everybody knows it. And it may be just walking through something that you find really, really cool. But having a chance to share it and a platform to share it. Within the Cyberjutsu chapter here locally, we always welcome local speakers to speak on a topic, gain experience, get involved in your cyber community as well, to speak, even if it's just like a local meetup beyond Toastmasters, or do both. Yeah, I definitely agree. Toastmasters speaking, I learned so much from preparing to teach somebody than I did when I was learning it in the beginning. So.
Excellent. Yeah, you're probably going to laugh when I say this. Learn to speak English.
Yep.
No, seriously.
No.
We talk in so many acronyms, you know, between my son in the Army, healthcare, and IT, and some of the acronyms cross. We have to learn to speak English, and I mean that seriously. I've learned how to take some of my technical jargon, speak to my wife to where she can understand, oh, you know that email? That's suspicious. Mm-hmm. The fact that she's going to her IT and I'm not involved, that's a win for me. That means I can speak English, right? So although it sounds funny, learn how to speak English rather than tech talk.
Mm-hmm. It's like its own language, tribal language of tech talk and acronyms. There are so many acronyms in our industry that it's absolutely ridiculous, and they mean 3 or 4 different things. Yeah.
Well, just take artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
In and of itself, you say AI, what does it really mean? Mm-hmm. LLM? ML? NLP?
Yep.
That's all AI, but then I just described it with other acronyms. So who knows what you're talking about unless you spell it out.
Absolutely. Well, again, I need yet another round of applause for our panel as we conclude today. Thank you very much. Appreciate all everybody's insights. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, we'll turn it over to Kim. I think this is probably like the most exciting time of the day, right? Yeah.
Thank you for hosting.
Oh, yeah.